Grand Admiral Vexthor stood motionless on the bridge of the Kronax Empire's flagship, Eternal Dominion, his crystalline exoskeleton reflecting the starlight as he studied the holographic display before him. His second set of arms tightened instinctively around his ceremonial staff of office, a habit he'd developed over 3 centuries of military service. The report he was reading had to be wrong. It simply had to be. "Explain this again," he rumbled, his voice carrying the natural harmonics that had made lesser species tremble for generations. "These humans willingly live in what we classify as death zones?" Senior researcher Kilvik adjusted her sensory appendages nervously. "Affirmative, Grand Admiral. They don't just survive in these zones, they appear to seek them out for what they call recreation. The Kronax Empire had ruled the known galaxy for millennia, their supremacy built upon their species' incredible durability and adaptation to extreme conditions. Their homeworld, Kronaxis Prime, was a nightmare of crushing gravity, caustic atmosphere, and perpetual electrical storms. It had forged them into living weapons, with crystalline exoskeletons that could withstand massive pressure, internal organs that could process most toxins, and neural networks that could function in conditions that would kill most species instantly. But these humans... "Show me the footage again," Vexthor commanded. The holographic display shifted to show a human settlement on what the locals called Mount Everest. The Kronax had classified such locations as extinction zones, places where the combination of low oxygen, extreme cold, and treacherous terrain made survival impossible for most species. Yet there were humans, not just surviving, but celebrating at the summit, taking what they called selfies and sharing snacks. "This can't be their military training?" Vexthor questioned. "No, Grand Admiral. This is tourism. They do this for enjoyment. And this is far from their most extreme activity." The display shifted again, showing humans diving into the depths of their oceans, jumping from orbital platforms with nothing but thin fabric to slow their descent, and willingly entering chambers designed to simulate the vacuum of space, all for something called scientific research or sports. Vexthor's crystalline structure vibrated with confusion. Throughout their history, the Kronax had encountered countless species. Some were physically powerful but mentally limited. Others were intellectually brilliant but physically fragile. None had ever matched the Kronax's combination of physical resilience and technological advancement. Until now. "What about their military capabilities?" he asked, trying to focus on more familiar territory. Kilvik's sensory appendages twisted in what the Grand Admiral recognized as discomfort. "That's complicated, sir. They appear to have developed most of their weapons technology through what they call accidents while pursuing other goals. They discovered nuclear fission while trying to understand the nature of matter. They developed their most powerful propulsion systems because they were curious about what lay beyond their solar system." The display showed more footage, humans testing experimental aircraft, voluntarily exposing themselves to extreme G-forces, and conducting survival training in environments that the Kronax would only send condemned criminals to. "There's more," Kilvik continued. "They regularly consume substances that would be classified as toxins on most worlds. They call it spicy food and energy drinks. Some of them actively seek out the most dangerous variants of these substances for entertainment." Vexthor's secondary heart began pulsing rapidly, a stress response he hadn't experienced since his first combat engagement. "Are they immune to fear?" "No, sir. They appear to experience fear just like any other species. They simply seem to view it as a challenge to overcome. Or worse, a source of excitement." The Grand Admiral turned away from the display, his crystalline form reflecting the stars in a pattern that indicated deep thought. The Kronax had built their empire on being the galaxy's apex predators, the species that could survive anything, go anywhere, endure any hardship. Their diplomatic doctrine was simple: demonstrate their superiority, accept submission, maintain order. But how does one demonstrate superiority to a species that treats survival challenges as entertainment? Prepare a diplomatic vessel, he finally ordered. We need to meet these humans directly. And kill Vic. Yes, Grand Admiral. Make sure our medical facilities are fully stocked. Something tells me we're going to need them, not for the humans, but for our own crew who have to watch what they do. As the senior researcher hurried away, Vexthor continued staring at the stars. For the first time in his long life, he felt something unusual, uncertainty. The Kronax Empire was about to engage with a species that defied their understanding of what was possible, what was safe, what was sane. The humans weren't just surviving in conditions that would kill most species, they were turning those conditions into tourist attractions and sporting events. They weren't just adapting to hostile environments, they were actively seeking them out for fun. Perhaps, Vexthor reflected, it was time for the galaxy's apex predators to reevaluate their position in the cosmic hierarchy. After all, what do you do when you encounter a species that treats your most hostile environments as vacation spots? The answer, he suspected, would reshape the galaxy forever. The diplomatic chamber aboard the Eternal Dominion had been designed to intimidate. Its walls were forged from compressed neutron star matter, the air was deliberately kept at temperatures that would cause most species' blood to crystallize, and the gravity was set to 3 times standard, all meant to demonstrate Kronax superiority. None of this seemed to bother Ambassador Catherine Harrison, who strode into the chamber wearing what appeared to be casual hiking gear and carrying a thermos. "Hope you don't mind," she said cheerfully, "but I brought some hot chocolate. Anyone want some? It's my grandmother's recipe, extra spicy with ghost peppers." The Kronax diplomatic team exchanged concerned glances. Their intelligence had warned them about human consumption of ghost peppers, a substance that could literally burn through standard protective gear. "Ambassador," Grand Admiral Vexthor began, his harmonics carefully modulated to project authority, "this chamber is designed to test our physical limits?" Harrison grinned. "Sorry, but this is actually quite comfortable. Reminds me of winter climbing in the Himalayas, though you might want to turn up the gravity a bit. We train in 5 times standard these days." Vexthor's crystalline structure flickered in what his subordinates recognized as confusion. "You train? In higher gravity?" "Oh yeah. It's great for muscle development. Though personally, I prefer deep-sea training, the pressure really gets your blood pumping. Speaking of which..." She pulled out a data pad. "We're hosting the annual Extreme Environment Games next month. We'd love to have Kronax participants." Senior researcher Kilvik, who had been monitoring the chamber's environmental readings, suddenly spoke up. "Ambassador, our scans indicate you have no protective equipment beyond your clothing." "Well, I did bring sunscreen. Force of habit, really. Had a nasty burn last week while testing experimental fusion drives in Mercury's orbit." Harrison took another sip from her thermos. "This chamber's actually quite cozy. Mind if I do some quick exercises? Long diplomatic meetings make me restless." Before anyone could respond, she dropped to the floor and began doing one-armed push-ups in the triple-gravity environment, chatting casually all the while about human extreme sports. Vexthor had faced down antimatter storms and survived battles in the void of space, but watching this human treat one of their most sophisticated intimidation chambers like a casual gym was testing his composure. "Perhaps," he suggested, trying to regain control of the situation, "we should discuss the terms of humanity's integration into the Empire?" Harrison paused mid-push-up. "Oh, right. About that, we were thinking more along the lines of a cultural exchange program. Your species seems really interesting, and we'd love to invite you to participate in some of our traditional activities." Traditional activities? Nothing too extreme to start with. Maybe some volcano boarding, stratospheric skydiving, deep-sea cave exploration, beginner stuff. The Kronax delegation watched in stunned silence as Harrison pulled up more images on her data pad, cheerfully describing activities that would qualify as suicide missions on most worlds. And this is from last week's antimatter containment field surfing competition, she continued. Had to disqualify poor Marcus because he wasn't using regulation equipment. Some people take these friendly competitions way too seriously, you know? Vexthor's secondary heart was working overtime. Ambassador Harrison, you must understand, the Kronax Empire has ruled the galaxy for millennia because we are the ultimate survivors. Our species can endure conditions that would kill. Oh, that reminds me. Harrison interrupted excitedly. We're developing these new survival training programs and would love your input. We've been looking for ways to make them more challenging. The Grand Admiral's crystalline structure vibrated with barely contained emotion. More challenging? Well, yes. The current programs are a bit too easy. Did you know we had to start adding random quantum fluctuations to our space survival courses because the participants were getting bored? Kids these days, always looking for a bigger thrill. Kilvik leaned closer to Vexthor. Sir, her vital signs indicate she's being completely truthful. The Grand Admiral stared at the human ambassador, who was now doing vertical push-ups while simultaneously reviewing diplomatic documents on her data pad. Everything the Kronax had built their empire upon, their superior physical resilience, their ability to survive in extreme conditions, their technological advancement, this human was treating it all like it was some kind of casual entertainment. Ambassador, he finally said, perhaps we should establish a series of formal challenges to evaluate our species' compatibility. Harrison beamed. A friendly competition? That sounds fantastic. Though we should probably keep it simple at first, wouldn't want anyone getting bored. Oh, and would you mind if we live stream it? Our extreme sports channels are always looking for new content. As the human ambassador enthusiastically began planning what she called a light workout session between their species, Vexthor made a mental note to update the Empire's diplomatic protocols. Somewhere between demonstrate superior strength and accept submission, they needed to add a new category: what to do when the supposedly inferior species treats your deadliest environments as recreational facilities. The galaxy was about to change, and for the first time in Kronax history, they weren't sure they would be the ones setting the terms. The Kronax High Council had never experienced anything quite like this. Their most challenging survival course, designed to test the limits of even their most elite warriors, had been transformed into what the humans were calling Summer Camp Location Beta. Commander Rack 6, supervisor of the Kronax Elite Training Division, watched in horror as a group of human tourists set up what they called a barbecue station next to an active lava flow. The marinade really benefits from the extra heat, called out Lieutenant James Morrison, flipping what appeared to be synthetic meat patties over the molten rock. Anyone want their burger medium rare? Sir, one of Rack 6's subordinates whispered, they're using our acid rain collection tanks as hot tubs. Indeed, a group of humans had gathered in the formerly lethal pools, drinking colorful beverages with tiny umbrellas in them. Someone had strung up something called fairy lights around the perimeter, and music, apparently called Jimmy Buffett, was playing from portable speakers. This is a military training facility. Rack 6 finally exploded, his crystalline form flashing in patterns of distress. The atmosphere is 60% chlorine. The gravity is 4 times standard. The ambient temperature is approaching plasma formation. Oh, is that what that nice tingle is? Asked Dr. Isabella Rodriguez, a human xenobiologist who was taking soil samples while wearing what appeared to be standard beach attire. Reminds me of my graduate school labs. Though you might want to increase the chlorine concentration, it's a bit mild. The Kronax commander's secondary nervous system was on the verge of shutdown. In the 3 days since the humans had arrived for the friendly competition, they had established a zip-line course through the electromagnetic storm field. Started a betting pool on who could hold their breath longest in the toxic swamps. Organized a volleyball tournament in the high-gravity zone. Set up a selfie station next to the carnivorous crystal formations. Turned the radiation chamber into what they called a sauna. Lieutenant Morrison, Rack 6 tried again. This facility is designed to push the boundaries of survival. Really? Huh. Morrison looked genuinely surprised as he flipped another burger. We've been using it as a corporate team-building retreat. Marketing department's loving it, says it's way more relaxing than their usual venues. Before Rack 6 could process this, a new group of humans arrived, carrying what appeared to be scientific equipment. Hope you don't mind, called out Dr. Rodriguez, but we invited some researchers from the Human Extreme Environment Studies Institute. They're interested in studying your lethal conditions for possible applications in elementary school playground design. The commander's crystalline structure nearly cracked. Playground design? Well, yeah. Kids these days need more challenging environments for proper development. Oh, that reminds me, would you mind if we toned down the safety features a bit? Our risk assessment team says it's making things too predictable. Rack 6 watched as the humans continued to treat the galaxy's most notorious military training facility like some kind of resort destination. A group was now playing something called Marco Polo in the acid pools, while others were using the gravitational fluctuation chamber for interpretive dance practice. Sir, his aide approached cautiously, the humans have submitted a formal request. What now? Rack 6 asked weakly. They want to reserve the facility for their annual Interstellar Scout Cookie Sales Convention. They say the conditions are perfect for their Junior Achievement Badge in Extreme Commerce. The commander stared at the scene before him. A human child, no more than 12 Earth years old, was teaching a group of seasoned Chronax warriors how to make something called S-mores, using plasma discharge for heat. Commander, Dr. Rodriguez called out, we've been meaning to ask, would you be interested in participating in our upcoming Extreme Sports Festival? Nothing too intense, just some starter events like solar diving, neutron surfing, and competitive black hole gradient navigation. Great for beginners. As his processing centers struggled to handle this new reality, Rack 6 realized something profound. The Chronax had spent millennia evolving to survive in the galaxy's harshest conditions, but humans had evolved to treat those conditions as entertainment. Oh, and one more thing, Morrison added cheerfully, setting up what appeared to be a karaoke machine near the plasma vents. We're planning a little get-together this weekend. Just a casual thing, extreme environment paintball followed by some light antimatter juggling. You guys should totally come. We'll even dial it back to beginner level, no quantum uncertainty fields or anything fancy. The mighty Chronax commander, veteran of 1,000 battles and survivor of countless lethal environments, did something he had never done before. He sat down heavily on a human lawn chair, somehow resistant to the corrosive atmosphere, and accepted a drink with a tiny umbrella in it. Sir, his aide asked, concerned. If you can't beat them, Rack 6 muttered, watching a group of humans start a conga line through the gravity distortion field, join them. Though perhaps we should update our definition of extreme first. The emergency alert echoed through the Eternal Dominion's command center. A Class X quantum anomaly had formed in the Cygnus sector, threatening to tear apart the fabric of spacetime itself. Grand Admiral Vexthor had assembled the Empire's finest scientists and strategists, all working frantically to find a solution before the anomaly consumed several inhabited systems. What he hadn't expected was for the humans to treat it like a sporting event. Sweet. A quantum anomaly, exclaimed Dr. Diana Walsh, lead scientist of the human delegation, while literally bouncing with excitement. We haven't had a good spacetime crisis since that black hole cluster last month. This is going to be epic. Vexthor's crystalline structure pulsed with stress patterns. Dr. Walsh, this anomaly is consuming entire star systems. Exactly. Perfect conditions for testing our new quantum surfing equipment. Hey, anyone want to join the betting pool on who can get closest to the event horizon? The Kronax admiral watched in bewilderment as the human scientific team began unloading what looked like modified spacesuits, each decorated with colorful stickers and personalized artwork. Some had phrases like, "Quantum or Bust," and "Event Horizon Surfer" emblazoned on them. Commander Jackson, Diana, called out to her colleague, "Did you bring the anomaly monitoring drones?" "Better," replied Commander Thomas Jackson, wheeling in what appeared to be a heavily modified piece of equipment. "Remember that quantum entanglement detector we were using as a coffee maker last week? Turns out if you reverse the polarity and add some duct tape, it makes a pretty decent anomaly scanner. Plus, it still makes espresso." Vexthor's secondary heart nearly stopped. "You modified highly sensitive scientific equipment to make coffee?" "Multitasking." Diana grinned. "Life's too short to use separate devices for particle physics and caffeine delivery. Now, about that anomaly, our initial scans suggest it's got a really interesting quantum fluctuation pattern. Kind of reminds me of that wormhole we found during last year's Extreme Space Phenomena Surfing Championship." The Admiral watched as the humans began preparing for what they called a quick peek at the reality-destroying anomaly. Their approach to the crisis violated every safety protocol in the Empire's extensive databases, yet somehow their calculations and modifications seemed sound, if completely unorthodox. "Sir," senior researcher Kilvik approached with alarm, "the humans are proposing to dive into the anomaly?" "Actually," Diana corrected while adjusting what appeared to be a makeshift quantum shield generator, "we're proposing to dive into the anomaly while collecting data, deploying stabilization fields, and hopefully setting a new record for extreme environment exploration." Multitasking, remember? The human team had already set up what they called a base camp near the command center, complete with energy drink dispensers, holographic displays showing various quantum measurements, and a scoreboard tracking what they called coolest quantum tricks. "Look," Commander Jackson explained while casually soldering additional features onto his suit, "the anomaly's got a rhythmic pulse to its quantum fluctuations. If we time it right, we can ride the wave of spatial distortion right into the core. It'll be just like that time we surfed the solar flares on Alpha Centauri, but with more dimensional shifting." "Riding spatial distortions?" Vexthor's translator must be malfunctioning. "Oh yeah. The key is to lean into the quantum uncertainty. Trust me, once you get used to existing in multiple dimensional states simultaneously, it's actually pretty fun. Anyone want to try? We brought spare suits." The Kronax team watched in a mixture of horror and fascination as the humans prepared for their mission. They had somehow turned a potential galaxy-ending crisis into what they called a rad adventure opportunity. "Emergency protocol update," Diana announced cheerfully. "We're going to need some music for this. Any requests for the Save the Galaxy playlist?" As human pop music began playing through the command center speakers, Vexthor realized that perhaps this unorthodox approach was exactly what they needed. After all, conventional methods hadn't worked, and the humans' strange combination of scientific brilliance and complete disregard for normal safety parameters had produced remarkable results before. "Oh, and Admiral?" Diana called out as her team prepared to launch, "We're live streaming this to the Extreme Science channel. Our followers love a good quantum crisis resolution. Should boost recruitment for next year's Interstellar Physics X Games." The mighty Kronax Admiral, guardian of galactic order and veteran of countless cosmic crises, found himself doing something unprecedented. He authorized the mission while simultaneously signing up for the humans' Quantum Surfing 101 training course. Sometimes, he reflected as he watched the human team cheerfully dive into the reality-destroying anomaly while taking selfies, the best solution to an impossible problem was to let the impossible species handle it. One standard galactic year after the quantum anomaly incident, the Kronax High Council chamber had changed dramatically. Gone were the traditional intimidation features and deadly environmental hazards. Instead, the room sported what humans called an open office plan, with comfortable seating areas, collaborative spaces, and, most shockingly, a coffee bar. Grand Admiral Vexthor, now sporting a custom-made "I survived human training camp" badge on his crystalline exoskeleton, was reviewing the latest reports from the joint human-Kronax initiatives. "Let me make sure I understand this correctly," he said to the assembled council. "Our military enrollment has tripled?" "Yes, sir," reported Commander Rack 6, who had recently completed his certification in what humans called extreme team building. "Ever since we started advertising our training programs as adventure tourism, we've been flooded with applicants. The humans marketing department was right, apparently, calling something a lethal challenge just makes people want to try it more." The displays showed footage from the newly established Joint Species Academy. Kronax warriors were teaching humans advanced crystalline formation techniques, while humans were showing Kronax cadets how to freestyle through asteroid fields. Someone had even started a cross-species band called the Quantum Surfers. "And what about the science division?" Vexthor asked, taking a sip from his mug of human coffee, extra spicy, with something called ghost pepper extract. Senior researcher Kilvik, wearing a Physics X Games champion medal, stepped forward. "Our research efficiency has increased by 400%. The humans' approach of let's try it and see what happens has led to several breakthroughs, though we've had to rebuild the laboratory 17 times this month." "Only 17? Vexthor raised an eyebrow. "They're getting better at containment." "Actually, sir, they're getting better at building faster. They've turned laboratory reconstruction into a competitive sport. The current record is 3 hours and 14 minutes for a complete quantum physics lab." The displays shifted to show various joint projects across the galaxy. The formerly deadly training grounds on Kronax's Prime had been converted into what humans called an extreme sports resort. The Quantum Anomaly Containment Team had spawned a professional league for dimensional surfing. Even the Kronax Diplomatic Corps had adopted human practices, now conducting negotiations while bungee jumping from orbit to keep things interesting. "There's more," Rack 6 added. "The humans have submitted a proposal for next year's Galactic Olympics." "Do I want to know?" Vexthor asked, already feeling his secondary heart preparing for stress. "They want to add antimatter wrestling, synchronized solar diving, and something called extreme diplomatic parkour. They say traditional negotiations are too boring." The Grand Admiral looked out at the transformed chamber. A year ago, the Kronax Empire had been the undisputed master of survival, the apex predators of the galaxy. Now, they were partners with a species that treated their most terrifying challenges as recreational activities. "Oh, and one more thing," Kilvik added, checking her data pad. "The Human Youth Division has asked if they can use the Quantum Fluctuation Chamber for their annual science fair. They say the standard labs don't provide enough creative opportunities." Vexthor remembered a time when the mere mention of quantum fluctuations would send seasoned warriors running for cover. Now, human children were using them for school projects. "Speaking of education," Rack 6 continued, "the Joint Elementary School program is showing interesting results. The human children are teaching our younglings how to make something called slime using quantum particles, while our instructors are teaching them advanced crystalline mathematics. Though we had to update the difficulty level when a 6-year-old human girl solved our previously impossible theoretical problems while having a tea party." The Grand Admiral stood, his crystalline form reflecting the light in patterns of amusement and resignation. "Send a message to Earth's Governing Council," he ordered. "Tell them we accept their proposal for the joint exploration of the Galactic Core's hazard zones. But this time, we're bringing our own extreme sports equipment." As the council chamber buzzed with activity, Vexthor reflected on how much had changed. The Kronax had spent millennia believing they were the ultimate survivors, only to discover a species that turned survival into an extreme sport. They had thought themselves the apex predators of the galaxy, only to find humans treating their deadliest environments like playgrounds. And perhaps that was the greatest lesson of all. The true mark of an advanced species wasn't just the ability to survive anything, it was the ability to look at the universe's most terrifying challenges and say, hey, that looks fun. Let's add some music and make it a competition. The galaxy would never be the same. And as Vexthor watched a group of human and Chronax cadets planning what they called a casual weekend trip into a supernova's corona, he realized he wouldn't have it any other way. After all, as his new human friends liked to say, the universe was too fascinating to explore without a sense of adventure, and maybe a few gravity-defying stunts along the way.